P, how far?
Fine.
How today now?
We thank God now.
Okay. So P, wetin be this thing where you go for her?
Na mineral.
So you dey enjoy am?
How you go enjoy your
So like which time you dey like take mineral?
even though now one a week, it's good now.
One a week?
Yes.
Okay. So you dey like cold one?
I know one go one because it must if I too much.
Okay. So you dey feel say if you drink cold one, e no go dey good for your body?
No.
But if you drink hot one, e go dey better?
Yes.
Eh.
You no go feel cold one. Cold too much.
Okay. Okay, because if that cold can't enter your body now, it will be
no.
like say fever don't enter.
Yes, the fever don't come.
Okay. What about the sugar wey dey inside?
Na small. Go drink. No go drink too much.
No go drink too much?
Yes. Once a week.
Okay,
Yes.
once a week. Hello, my name is Ezenwa Ongbenu, founder of Creative Juices, and this is
Paul Manuel.
This is Paul Emmanuel. Paul is my partner in this project. He's an investigator at the Biafran Medical Institute, and he's here to provide us a degree of academic credibility in that he has a tremendous body of work that precedes him. And in many ways, the information that I'll give you today stands upon the foundation of the exceptional work that he has done at the Biafran Medical Institute. So Paul, tell us a little bit about work, typical day.
My work. Cardinal work.
Okay. Paul, you're so bashful. You're so humble. Paul also does many other things besides just gardening and whatnot. So Paul is really a researcher of the highest order, of the highest caliber, which he will still demonstrate in little flashes here and there. So let's get into it. So this episode of Know Your Foods is about soft drinks. Now, soft drinks are more than just sugar water, right? They're woven into our cultural fabric just from years years and decades of social and cultural conditioning. All the advertising, all the marketing, and all the memes and all the catchy slogans, opening happiness, live for today, seize the day, seize the hour, ride the orange groovy train, or whatever else. So there's just so much that comes with these soft drinks. They're very emotionally charged and whatnot, but fundamentally, if we break down the soft drink into its constituent parts, you find that really it has no place, in the human diet, because for all intents and purposes, it's a sublethal poison. Because here's what I mean. A poison is essentially a substance that injures or damages the body, and a soft drink ticks that in so many ways, which I'll briefly go into. But it really says a lot about our society that something that the authorities and the regulatory bodies allow to be so widely promoted, right? These are among the most aggressively marketed and advertised products, because really, the product of it itself can't really sell itself just because it's carbonated sugar water. So there is a huge industry around it to give it meaning, to give it an element of acceptability, and also just to reinforce the work that has been done in preceding decades. That's why you see the soft drinks at weddings, you see it at baby showers, we drink it when we're bored, we drink it at work, we drink it in traffic. So it's so interwoven just by virtue of how aggressively it has been pushed. But it says a lot that it's fundamentally a worthless product. So there are three aspects of soft drinks I'd like to look at. One is the high amounts of high fructose corn syrup, which has specific health effects. Then I'll also look at the phosphoric acid content, and then also some of the preservatives that are in soft drinks. So high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is the sweetener. When they say that soft drinks contain between 9 to 11 teaspoons of sugar, they're not referring to table sugar, that is crystalline sugar. What they're referring to is high fructose corn syrup, which is produced from corn starch. And starch is a long string of just glucose. So that long string, that glucose polymer, is broken down into the individual sugar molecules. And then those glucose molecules, because what you have initially is all glucose, a certain fraction of it is converted into fructose. So you have a blend of free floating glucose and fructose. That is what is high fructose corn syrup. It's a toxic chemistry using fancy enzymes like isomerase and other fancy chemicals. So so it also contains some chemical residues when you have the high fructose corn syrup product. But essentially, it's a blend that is 55% fructose and then 45% glucose. And this differs from like table sugar, which is 50% glucose, 50% sugar. So it's in equal ratios. So this is high fructose just because of the relatively higher amount of fructose. Now fructose is sweeter than glucose, so a given amount of high fructose corn syrup will give you more sweetening than a given amount of table sugar by virtue of the higher fructose content. Certain processed foods use an even higher ratio of high fructose corn syrup, going as high as 90% fructose and 10% glucose. So that gives you even more a sweeter taste for a given amount of sugar. But fructose has specific toxic effects that are linked to it that also make high fructose corn syrup a very worrisome sweetener to use in soft drinks. So first of all, the glycemic effects. When you consume a refined sugar, both high fructose corn syrup and even table sugar, it's rapidly digested, rapidly emptied into the bloodstream because it's essentially a pre-digested carbohydrate. So it rushes into your bloodstream in a matter of minutes, jacks up your level of blood sugar, which also jacks up your level of insulin in response to that high level of sugar to signal to the body to absorb that sugar. So over time, that leads to a breakdown in the regulation of insulin in the body, and then you now become insulin resistant, because when you have these roller coasters of high levels of insulin repeatedly, your body essentially loses sensitivity to insulin. The key target organs that absorb that sugar out of circulation, for example your liver or your fat cells or your muscle cells, which are important reservoirs for excess sugar and other excess nutrients, they essentially lose the sensitivity to insulin just because of abnormally high levels of insulin. Because if one thinks that insulin only regulates blood sugar, that's a bit like saying saying to a Jamaican that Bob Marley is just a guitarist, right? He's a lot more than that. Insulin is a lot more than just, it's a core driver of almost all storage processes in the body and also many growth processes in the body as well. So if you have a problem with insulin, things go wrong with sugar, things go wrong with fat in the bloodstream, things go wrong with cholesterol, things go wrong with protein synthesis as well. A lot of things really go wrong that essentially degenerate the body. That's why insulin resistance is at the core of so many chronic conditions, from cancers to type 2 diabetes, to also liver disease and obesity, so many things, because it regulates key processes in the body. If you get insulin wrong, you're essentially well along that path to developing a chronic condition, and this takes you well along that way just due to the burst of sugar that it induces in the body. Paul, do you have anything to say about this soft drink so far?
This soft drink, everybody go drink now for Nigeria. Even though not small, we can go drink.
Yes.
Go do party.
Yes.
Go buy.
Yes.
Do anything now, you don't, even though not church.
Yes.
Go do something for church. Now this kind of drink, go, everybody go drink. Go everything, much, everything. See, do drink for Lagos. Everybody go drink.
Go drink. So, no how we go say come out soft drink.
But we're nobody.
It must stay there.
Yes.
It must full ground.
Too much.
You know, if you do something, say soft drink, don't do it there.
But where?
They go say, oh boy.
But where?
Hey.
And that must.
And that must. Almost.
Almost.
Okay. The next aspect of high fructose corn syrup is the formation of what they call AGEs. And AGEs stand for Advanced Glycation Product. And you see that it seems almost an acronym for aging, right? So you could say that Advanced Glycation End Products ages the body. And really it does, because when people say that sugar is bad for you, sugar is bad for you, so it's a lot more than just that burst of sugar. Because if we understand the chemistry of sugar, we find that sugar is actually quite reactive and it's very sticky. Let me give you an instance. If you take like granulated sugar, so this table sugar, right, and you placed it in a little pot, put a little water, and you put that cubed or granulated sugar there, and you heated it up a little bit, you find that it will melt and dissolve into the little bit amount of water, and it will form a syrupy thing. If you keep that heat at a steady level, add more sugar, it will get thicker and thicker. Allow it to cool, you find that it will harden over time and form a glassy kind of substance. And if you added anything to it while it was liquid, it would encase that thing and bind to it very strongly. So it has this kind of adhesive quality. And that also happens when glucose gets into your bloodstream. The individual molecules of glucose and fructose, as they're circulating around the body, if they stay around for too long, if like the burst is so high, they interact with proteins in the blood, like for example hemoglobin that carries oxygen, or like immune antibodies, which are also protein based, or also they interact with the lining of your arteries, right? So for example, in your blood vessels, because that's where sugar gets into, from digestion into circulation, then into cells of the body. But in this intermediary phase, when it's in circulation, it can be quite problematic, because you have glucose and fructose floating around, but because of the burst, right, this 11 teaspoons at once, it's unprecedented, because no natural food can give you that much sugar that has already been pre-digested, right? Because if you eat a carbohydrate-rich food, it tends to be starch, or even if it's like a fruit that also contains sugar, it contains many other things, vitamins, minerals, certain fibers that bind and hold on to that sugar and make it digest a little slowly. But this rapidly digesting sugar is only from processed foods, and it creates this abnormally high levels of glucose. So you have, for example, now a red blood cell. This glucose and fructose can interact with the proteins and damage them. It's an irreversible reaction. Just like, for example, how you can like caramelize something, right? If you add sugar on something and heat it up, the sugar will melt and encase it and form this hard crystal structure. That's what it does to individual proteins. It essentially caramelizes proteins in your body. It browns, or it kind of oxidizes. It just burns things. So sugar, highly reactive, almost like an acid. So sugar in this highly processed form has very corrosive effects just because of its reactivity. Because there's a window before the body is able to absorb all that excess sugar. But then it's already done its damage. It's interacted with the sensitive lining of your blood vessels, it's interacted with the red blood cells, it's interacted with floating, even like protein carriers, protein transporters, anything that's protein based, and everything in your body is protein based. That's why high blood sugar can damage your kidney, it can damage your brain, it can damage your eyes, it can damage your bones, it can damage your intestines, it can damage anything, just because it's a full spectrum damager of sorts. So another interesting thing about high fructose corn syrup is that even before you consume that glucose, when glucose and fructose is still in this bottle, because this is just a mixture of glucose and fructose with other kinds of toxic chemicals. So when you have that glucose and fructose still in the bottle, because it's free floating, it's not bound to other organic molecules to help stabilize it, they tend to degenerate, and they can degenerate into a compound called methyl-glyoxal. Now the worrying thing about methyl-glyoxal is that this is the one of the agents that creates all the diabetic complications. When you're diabetic, you have chronically elevated blood sugar, high levels of glucose and fructose chronically in circulation, And that glucose and fructose gets oxidized and breaks down into methylglyoxal, and then that's what creates a lot of the damage, the peripheral nerve damage. That's what damages the skin, that leads to skin ulcers. That's what damages the immune system, making you susceptible to infections. That's what damages the blood vessels that supply your, like if you're a man, that supplies your penis and makes you impotent if you're diabetic. So it interacts with so many components in the body, these breakdown products of sugar. And I want to tell you that soft drinks contain even higher concentrations of methylglyoxal than is found in the blood of a diabetic. So if you consume a soft drink for a window before the body deals with methylglyoxal, because if you're not diabetic, there are enzyme systems that will break down methylglyoxal, but it takes time, and before that process is completed, methylglyoxal has already wreaked its damage. So each time you consume a soft drink, I would say for a window, maybe like 10 minutes, the composition of methylglyoxal in your blood is comparable to a diabetic. Then obviously it goes down once again. But these 10-minute windows, let's say you drank 3 soft drinks a day, for a brief period of the day you incurred the same damage as a diabetic. Do that long enough, you will necessarily become diabetic. And if not diabetic, you will have the complications of a diabetic. That means you might have sexual problems, you might have issues with energy, have issues with infections, have issues with your skin, have issues with digestion, and so on and so forth, just because of the full spectrum nature of the destructive activity of methylglyoxal. So with that being said, finally, fructose is also very interesting, because remember, it's sweetened by high fructose corn syrup. So with soft drinks, you have a higher burden of fructose relatively to glucose, because it's usually like 55% fructose, 45% glucose, sometimes even higher. Some soft drinks might be like 60% fructose or even higher, just because of this race for sweetness. Because if you want it to be sweeter, use more fructose, and you don't gain any additional cost or anything. So I really feel that they're using higher blends of high fructose corn syrup. And the problem is that glucose, which we know as sugar and we know as energy to the body, when we consume the food that contains glucose, glucose can be metabolized by the whole body. So it can be metabolized by muscle, it can be metabolized by fats, it can also be metabolized by the heart, it can be, directly used by the kidney. So many organs can directly take glucose out of blood circulation. But it's not the same with fructose, because fructose is first metabolized in the liver. And that means that when you consume a high amount of fructose, your liver has a burden, because all that fructose must first go to your liver. Some of it is converted into glucose that the rest of the body can now use, because glucose is that universal embodiment of energy, whereas fructose is highly specific and must be worked on by the liver before it becomes that universal form of energy. So it's metabolized by the liver, so that places a high burden on the liver. And when you have this burst, imagine 11 teaspoons, possibly even higher in some brands, of so much fructose all at once. It's this unnatural burst that is really the problem. So a lot of that sugar is actually converted to fat in the liver, so you get a fatty liver, you get a congested liver, you get a liver that's not able to detoxify the body as well, so it's really toxic to the liver, and it leads to a progressive degeneration of the liver, stressing it so much with so much fructose, because it has to metabolize all of it, and it can make the liver inflamed. That is where the immune cells within the liver are overactivated, and then alter essentially derange the behavior of the liver. That's the immune cells actively derange the liver. So its other functions, its detoxification functions, its bile production functions are kind of affected by the activation of the immune system. And the liver can also get scarred. You see the formation of like collagen scars that just also disrupt the liver, that make it hard, that make it sclerotic, that essentially gradually decay and kill the liver. That's why we see a lot of teenagers actually needing transplants. If you consume enough fructose, you know, because of how we've been socialized, so kids consume multiple soft drinks a day, and when you do that for years, the damage is so rapid that even before you're an adult, even before age 18, your liver can be so damaged that you need a transplant. So highly toxic chemistries. So with that being said, another problematic aspect of soft drinks, besides just the sugar content, because it goes so far beyond just the high fructose corn syrup, it's the whole constellation of toxic chemicals that form that flavor and the taste, because all those things all have their individual health effects. Take, for example, the bite of a soft drink. When you take a soft drink, you go, ah, because it has this acidic flavor. That acidic flavor comes from phosphoric acid. So phosphoric acid is what gives cola its bite. It's what gives other forms of soft drink, like this orange drink, its bite. So, but phosphoric acid, as the name implies, is acidic. And in the body, the pH must be maintained within this range. If it drops too low, the nervous system becomes depressed, and then you can have problems. You know, you might just pass out, you know, if this falls low enough, or if the pH goes too high, the immune system, the nervous system gets overexcited, you might have seizures and whatnot, and also pass out. So this is very, very important, because so many physiological processes in the body only occur optimally within this range. So once you fall out of this range, it really becomes problematic. So you either get, if you fall below acidosis or above alkalosis, which are both disease states. But the body is largely able to keep it within this bandwidth. But it is expensive, because when you consume this acidic, when you increase the acidic load so much, then the body needs something to buffer it. Because you don't only just eliminate acids, but you also have to neutralize them in the body before those acids are neutralized. So, and one of the important reserves of alkaline minerals, right? Because how you balance acidity is with alkalinity, is your bones. And your bones contain many important alkaline minerals. Your calcium, your magnesium, your potassium, your sodium. So your bones are primary alkaline reserve. So when you consume an acidic food, your body has to leach out calcium from its storage form in the bone into circulation to buffer the effects of this acid before it's eliminated in urine, in exhalation, in sweat, in stool, because all those excess acid metabolites are eliminated through these organs of, or through these channels of elimination. So, basically, what am I saying? It draws calcium out of your bones into the blood circulation to buffer, but before that calcium is also eliminated, because once it's mobilized from your bones and it's buffered the acid, it also needs to be eliminated with the acid. But that could lead to weaker bones, it could lead to brittle bones, it could lead to osteopenia or osteoporosis if it gets bad enough. So it essentially wears down your bones and makes your bones weaker and weaker progressively because of just the acidic content that's drawing out the alkaline minerals, which are the hardeners, right? Because it's these alkaline minerals that make bone hard. Once you take it out, you know, the bone loses quality. And this calcium, even before it's excreted, it can form like stones in your kidney. It can also calcify your arteries. It can calcify your brain. So it can lead to many things. It can also calcify the soft tissues within your joints. So you find that the mobilization of calcium from the bone into the bloodstream, when it calcifies structures in your brain, that puts you at high risk of Alzheimer's and other dementia type of conditions. You know, it essentially degenerates the brain. You lose memory, you lose balance, you lose coordination, just because that calcium is hardening structures that ought to be soft and pliable within the brain. Soft organs become hardened. So it also hardens your blood vessels. Let's say your coronary arteries, putting you at high risk of heart attacks. It also hardens peripheral arteries, putting you at high risk of peripheral vascular disease, you know, where blood circulation is cut off to certain regions, and it's, you know, it's very painful, you know, and can lead to infections and other things of that sort. So it leads to all kinds of problems phosphoric acid. And it also, because your teeth are also an important alkaline reserves, so sugar damages your teeth, one, because it promotes bad bacteria that break down the protective layer of your teeth, that's the enamel, but also it degenerates your teeth from a much more fundamental level, from the interior, because your body robs calcium, robs sodium, robs potassium from your teeth to buffer the phosphoric acid, and that essentially weakens and rots your teeth. So this is also another driver of cavities, of inflamed gums, and you know, essentially just dead, infected teeth that just remain in our mouth, right, and create pain and discomfort. Finally, the preservatives. Briefly, when you have sugar enclosed in an airtight vessel, if there are no antimicrobial substances within it, you would expect that anaerobic bacteria, that's bacteria that survive in the absence of oxygen, because there shouldn't be much oxygen in an airtight bottle, right, because it eventually be used up. But there should be some fermentation. That's the sugar should be converted into either lactic acid or possibly alcohol by the action of yeast and bacteria, but none of that goes on within this bottle, even though there are nutrients, you know, to utilize, and that's because of the preservatives. And a very important preservative in soft drinks is called sodium benzoate. Now this is, you might say, okay, this is just another chemical name. What is the meaning? It's because in the body it's converted into another highly toxic chemical. Because what matters in the body is not so much what it is, but also what it becomes. So sodium benzoate becomes several orders of magnitude more toxic when it's metabolized in the body, because it produces benzene. Benzene is a carcinogen. What a carcinogen essentially means, if we break it up into its parts, so it's a carcinogen. So it's a carcinoma, right? So it's a cancer generator. So this stands for carcinoma. This stands for generator, because of the damage it creates. It damages genetic material, it damages cell membranes, it damages sensitive proteins. So it creates the disorder that, you know, that leads cells to mutate into cancers, to adopt that cancer complex of behaviors, right, that characterize transformed cells from normal healthy cells. So this pushes you down that slope so many ways. So at each of these levels, soft drinks are highly problematic. And to be honest, I've only scratched the surface, because there's so many other things that are in soft drinks. You have like brominated vegetable oils. You have colorings like tartrazine that are neurotoxic. There are other colorings like the caramel color in certain colas that are nephrotoxic, that are linked to causing cancers. So it's just a highly problematic concoction. You have things like brominated vegetable oil that are used in mainly like lime soft drinks, which is a fire retardant. So the same things that you find in maybe like a fireman's jacket, it's the same stuff that's used in soft drinks. Why would you use a fire retardant in a soft drink is beyond my comprehension. And why there is no alarm raised by this product that is really at the root of the obesity epidemic, that's at the root of the heart disease epidemic, that's at the root of liver disease epidemic, that's at the root of so much stuff that is wrong with modern society. But this stuff is given the pride of place. When you have a World Cup, this is what is brandished: corrosive and death. That's the message. Brazil 2014 brought to you by corrosive and death. Paul, do you have anything to say? We don't conclude.
Yes, we don't conclude.
So, Paul, waiting you gather from all this thing where I talk now.
You don't get many things.
Okay. No, Thank you so much for your time.